Good evening. You're listening live to the Two Extreme Horror Show. I'm your host, Rob. With me tonight is my guest, the real Dr. V. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
This evening, sir, I believe we're going to talk about something on Netflix, Player's Choice, as we like to say. A new series, or a series that's new to me that had been recommended by you, of all people, and I wanted to share with you my thoughts on the first episode, and it's an episode called The Frankenstein Chronicles, starring Sean Bean. I believe it came out a year or two ago. It has 2 seasons.
Actually, came out 2015, actually.
Whenever it came out, it's out. I just noticed it's been on Netflix recently, popping up on my list, and I said, okay, based on you telling me it's kind of like a Frankenstein doctor thing, and it had Sean Bean, and I said, you know what, let me give this a shot and check it out. So last night I watched the first episode, and here's my initial thoughts. And then I will ask you what your initial thoughts were for the first episode, because I know you've seen more than I have, and I don't know anything about it.
I'm trying to cut down to the very first episode, so I mean,
when these shows are done, I friggin' love them, or I think they're produced very well, because they have small towns that look like they were 200, 300 years old. However Britain wants them to be, they can do it. And so you've got Sean Bean walking around. He's police detective, it looks like, whatever you call him back then in the 1820s, I believe. He's starting off with some little incident that goes bad, but it's so gothic looking. There's lots of smoke. There's lots of fires. It's in a shitty part of town. It's disgusting. People are assholes, and a body washes up on shore in the marsh after a guy basically, drowns in the muck there, and it's like, I'm hooked already, and I don't know if it's going to be good. I don't know if it's going to suck, but it's one of those British productions that, damn it, it's like Penny Dreadful, where you just kind of get sucked in. And even though the girl's body is a bunch of body parts sewn together, it looks pretty real. And then when you see the hand just twitch a little bit as he goes to grab it, and then he realizes, I've got a penicillin outbreak. I'm like, is that where she touched her? I'm kind of jumping right into it, but I remember a lot of things about it. But it seems, at least right now, like a detective show. And I don't know where it's going to go, and I don't want you to spoil it for me. But for those that haven't seen the Frankenstein Chronicles, what made you want to watch it to begin with?
Oh, well, it's Sean Bean. Sean always commits to good roles. I did not watch him. I did recently found out he was in Game of Thrones, but not even Sean Bean can get me to watch Game of Thrones. With all, I think Game of Thrones was great. That series was ruined for me because basically everyone was whining about it, so I was like, well, I'm not even gonna watch it then. So, but this, I was on Netflix. I love BBC shows, and this is based on I was her name, Mary Shelley's. Mary Shelley, yeah, Frankenstein. Now in the book, they kind of they loosely adapted around it. It's a detective series, kind of like if you're on, you got some other shows on there from the early days, like Ripper Street was one of them, or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, but no, it's just Sean Bean. I was like, come on, he's like a little British series, and so okay. And then it intrigued because he claims he found a body, because basically what in the first episode, they're basically like, he was sent there to capture some opium smugglers. They were going against the English Channel, right around there. And instead, after he confronts them, or I can't remember if they all died or if he kept managed to arrest them, but while he's walking there, the next day they notice that there's a body there of a small child, until he realizes there's actually a combination of like 7 different children, and turns out and he goes around like the missing body reports and stuff, because the Home Secretary, his boss, this political figure, he's like, we're gonna keep this hush hush.
Yes.
It's because of how graphic the nature of it, what it is, it's very disturbing, and so right there, as I was like, I'm like, is this guy a suspect? He doesn't want him talking about it to the public, But anyway, so the guy's name is Mr. Robert Peel, played by Tom Ward, another good actor in the series. But yeah. You see this, Sean Bean enlists the help of a vagabond, who claims to have seen this monster going around snatching children. This leads him to the butcher in the town, where he says his daughter has gone missing, you know. And Sean Bean, I mean, a person can't help but think then look, oh man, it's like I was wondering if one of the body parts belongs to the daughter of the butcher, and he's this, and you can tell he's not, he's hiding, or I forget at this point if he was serious, if he was drinking something, or if he seemed like he was
what happened, when he had the syphilis outbreak on his wrist, he went to apothecary, and he said, I'd had this before, and I think he gave him, I want to say it was something of mercury, which of course medicine wasn't 100% then. But what's good about that, and to your point about that, is it's used as an opportunity to get some flashbacks about him being married and his daughter, and it makes you wonder if the outbreak killed them or if he unintentionally gave it to him. And it's you get this really just dirty, grungy atmosphere of where they're at, simply because that's how it was back in the 1820s. But yet you've got, like you said, the political part to it of them wanting to keep it hush hush too. So yes, he'd had some experience he's definitely a pro with what he does, but he's obviously undergoing a lot of grief right now.
Yep. So he's sent to work with a constable played by Richie Kimball. At this time, the police force, I think they're just forming their police force. This is like the late, the 1800s, I want to say.
1820s, I believe.
1820s. Sort of on there, yeah. Not 1800s, yeah, sorry. Duh. So they had just had their own Britain over there, like where this little town. They just had their own little police there. The police, they had a black powder gun. If they carried a gun, it was a little pistol, like you'd see like
one shot deal.
Yeah, one shot, yeah. Otherwise, you had your billy clubs they carried. So the guy who assigned to work with him was actually a black guy, and which really kind of drew me in, because I was like, well, usually like this time the point, I guess if it was in the United States, there's no way that those guys would have been working together. He would have been like a slave, doing stuff and around the place, and that's it. You wouldn't, be a cop But over in London, England, I guess they were not as racist as we are.
Well, I think being made for the British audience primarily is one of the things that the approach that they maybe take over there is that you're making it for that audience. You're not necessarily trying to rewrite it for American sensibilities and history. And to your point, when his black partner shows up, or he gets assigned to him, immediately there's some people might say in America, especially if they're younger, oh, this is just check the box wokeness or whatever. But to your point, they go through a lot of sitting down in a diner of all places, a pub, talking and getting to know each other, which on the surface is just two buddy cops getting to learn to each other and eventually trust each other, I assume. And it's neat because he asks about his background and how he got brought up, and he mentioned his partner that he grew up in the guild, and he's fortunate to be where he's at and everything too. So no sense of entitlement, but it's just that whole thing. Hey, can I trust you? What's your background? How did you get here? Why are you appointed? And so he seems competent too, but it's something where I think we'll see more of him, just because you can tell he's made a partner for a reason. We don't know what it is yet, although they're taking turns watching out on this pub where the kid had mentioned that something was going on, and they had followed it too. So yeah, I think that's a good point on your part.
Oh, and I don't know if you met the journalist yet in this series. No.
Just the first season.
Once you meet the journalist in here, he uses a fake name, but you'll find out later who it really is supposed to be. So I don't want to spoil that for you, but he's a major literacy. He wrote a couple huge books.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, what's interesting about the show so far to me is, like I said, I think the atmosphere is very solid. It's very good watching it. It's always refreshing to be able to take in a show that physically doesn't look like it's set in modern day times and not CGI. And I appreciate that. And I think, like I say, almost nobody does it better than when it comes to these kind of period pieces than the British. They've been doing it for a long time. They've been doing it very successfully. Reminds me of like watching a Hammer horror film or the old Sherlock Holmes mysteries with Jeremy Brett that were fantastic too. So I'm definitely interested in seeing more of it. I think that the first episode was very deliberate. that didn't bother me. There's a lot of moving parts that I think are pretty good. It's not rushed. That I don't feel like where they're in a hurry to get everything on there, and I think they're giving it enough time to let it develop. My only concern going forward would be like some of the Netflix shows we've reviewed on Extreme Movie Show is that, hey, what's going to happen if season or episode 3 or 4 is it going to drag ass a little bit and be filler when it doesn't need to be? And I hope that's not the case. But to your point, not a lot of episodes, so hopefully they get to the meat and potatoes about it. And that's why sometimes there's these gems out there on Netflix or other streaming services like Prime that we like to look at and cover too. So yeah, so far so good. I've liked the first episode. I think it's going to get better. Without spoiling anything, what can you tell me besides what you just mentioned before, the journalist? What can I look forward to?
Well, the journalist, eventually in the series, the press does learn about the discovery of the body and all that stuff, and they do play a major part in this series. I'll just mention the name of the journalist he's running for. He's running under the pseudonym of the name Boz for the Morning Chronicle, which is a very famous newspaper founded in London. And this guy would go on to serve as prime minister.
Interesting. Yes. Interesting. We'll see how that develops. Yeah, that's one thing that I am under the impression of, for no really documentable reason, that I think the British like to stuff in a lot of their history because they think, oh, without us there'd be no template for America and everybody else, and we're the original ones. And of course, at this time in the 1820s, if I know anything about history, Britain was fairly high up on the world scale when it comes to standard of living and advancement of society. And of course, other societies would argue different things and all that too. It's not what the show's about. But I could definitely see that the people that wrote the show were involved in it, continued that trend. And I certainly don't mind that at all. And that's one of the refreshing things about watching a series set in another culture, even one that seems very familiar, like Britain, is that, they'll include little truisms that make you just appreciate the fact that there are things that are different than America's stuff, like the way they're dressed, the way they're talking about the guild set up with his partner, like I mentioned. To your point, the way the journalism angle is probably going to reveal, because this is before fingerprints, this is before lots of stuff. So even if you're just into the detective part of this, it's interesting to see, hey, they're doing what they can with what they know at the time. And oh, by the way, things have to get stamped. They have to get handwritten with those fancy cool pens, and people have to be given orders and stuff, and you have to have a backdrop to understand why those things are important. And so far so good. I agree with you, Sean Beam. His presence on here is really good. I'm starting to vibe on his character a little bit. Don't know too much.
He plays really into, because he's an older character. He's he's this kind of disgruntled at first, but he's very level to his job. He wants to get done, and they look at him like, well, you're just an old guy, he's like, you don't know what you're doing. And they kind of like, he kind of gets a runaround from later in the series, because he's learning the truth. So, how far do you pursue the truth at your own expense? Do you make yourself out to be the villain in order to expose corruption? And how far does this corruption go? It gets really good. The author, Mary Shelley, is actually in this series of the character. As a character, yes.
Interesting.
But you'll find out, it's just the technology they're working with too. It's like it's early 1800s. Yeah. So they're just learning about electricity and that stuff. Still, scientists are still forming around what they know. Mary Shelley and this is like this takes place like a year, I think, after she wrote her book Frankenstein. Okay. So so it's called the Frankenstein Chronicles, with the and you get a hint of a body already being found. You kind of figure out kind of what's going to be happening later in the series, but you're not, but there are some key plots in there that you don't know about until you watch it. And so it surprised me. I just turned it on one day. I was like, "Oh, watch this," and I'm like, "Man, these are long episodes." But I'm like, after the first 2, I was hooked. The first one, I was like, I don't know if I want to watch, and I watched the second one. I was like, man, I got to keep watching this.
Yes.
And sadly, this show is still limbo because it originally aired either on BBC or Sky, one of those channels. In 2015, we got the rights to it in 2007 or 2016. Netflix did. They got so they aired here, where the show gained a huge popularity here. So their second season was made and acquired, because it was well received back there too. So right now, Netflix has the rights to air it and stuff, and there's no talk if there's gonna be a third season or not. It's still it never was officially canceled.
Right.
But I know, but Sean Bean wanted to do Game of Thrones, and I threw a wrench into everything. But even if it doesn't get renewed, it does. I'll say this about the series: if you're worried about starting a series, I only have only have two seasons.
Mm-hmm.
It does wrap it up nicely. So.
Okay.
It's not like you're like on a cliffhanger. You're like, oh, where's the rest of it? No, it does wrap it up nicely. So, and if they really want to leave it where it was, it's kind of like Breaking Bad. If they do bring it back, you might not like, they should have left it. They should have left it alone. But no, I love this show. That's actually one of my surprisingly favorites. I watched a couple years back.
Well, we may revisit this a little bit later and take a look at it as I get a couple more episodes in. I'm going to at least watch the second episode, see how it goes. I appreciate the fact it's not a gazillion episodes, so I do like that. The fact that you mentioned it has its tight ending, at least so far, is good to know. Yeah,
because that's the one thing I hate about starting these shows, and especially if it's a show that's not currently on air, it's on Netflix. I'm like, oh, when did this air? Oh, 2015. I'm like, 2 seasons. Do I really want to try? Because I've been screwed over in the U.S. here, ABC and all the other shows, and they cancel shows in the middle. Was Kid Cavalier getting canceled at the first season when I was actually better than anything else I had on there? It's like, why do I bother watching shows anymore? Because NBC, ABC, CBS, they all have a habit of just canceling shows. It's like, wow. And then it's always been my complaint. If you cancel shows that are actually decent, that people actually want to watch, especially ones that I want to watch, and then I see you guys are airing stuff like comedy shows that should have ended a long time ago. They've gone on for 12 years, and then you look at the crime shows, as far as CSI, it's the same damn show with 13 different people.
That's true. They've got the template down to a pattern. Yeah. No, Frankenstein Chronicles has been okay so far, and without knowing too much about it, I like I said, I'm glad I unearthed it. I put it under the Xtreme Horror Show just simply because we think, Frankenstein, we think scary stuff, but I wonder how much of the science we'll get into it, because I'm a bit of a geek with that stuff.
It's right around the Industrial Revolution, so I always think of please, sir, may I have some more?
Well, the final thought I have before I hand it over to you is that the one thing that was really apparent, I'd mentioned before, being a British show, having Britanisms in there, is you definitely get a sense of class structure. You see the people sleeping outdoors that don't have places to stay. You see where the kids that basically are on their own have their own little subculture where they know where to meet up and they share resources. You see where the elite have their own area too, and also you see where there's government. You also see where there's science in it too, and I imagine we'll see some stuff with art at some point. And again, all this in the very first episode, setting it up for what's going to come. Doesn't feel rushed, doesn't feel like it's plotting. It just feels very deliberate, which again is not a bad thing too. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts on this? This is a dark, gritty, early 1800s detective story. So if you loved Sherlock, the series I had done there for a while, or any of the other ones, was it Ripper Street? I think it was called.
Mm-hmm.
This would be right up your alley, crime alley.
Is this the darkest out of all those? Because I haven't seen those.
I wouldn't say the darkest. I'd say this is more close to the being, like you said, it's Frankenstein, man. It's
It's Frankenstein. That's good enough for me.
Right?
I'm down. When are they going to put it back on the big screen? I want Frankenstein. I want Invisible Man. I want the Mummy. I want it all, baby. Just give me a mummy movie every couple of years
Like,
and one of these classic monster movies, and I'll be fine. Or a show like this. I'm serious. I
yeah.
like how they can twist around and make it like it. It's like Dracula, the three episode show that we had talked about earlier in the year, I believe with Dalton the Authenticator, about it too. Again, take something that's classic, put your own twist on it. You can have fun with it too. So, good evening, Johnny. I see you in chat there. Word to your mother. Yes, sir. Happy Mother's Day to everybody. Doctor, I'd like to thank you for recommending it, first of all. And if it starts sucking, I'm going to blame you.
Speaking of Frankenstein, you want to see the monsters of that. The first adaptation of the book was in 1910.
Yeah.
A sound film. So the creature. So, and
all right, guys. Thanks for listening, Doctor. Thanks for showing up, and we'll look at possibly reviewing this even further. Have a good night. Stay extreme.